Hello, my name is Kathleen Lugrich, and I'm the Director of Programs and Education for the Army Historical Foundation and your host for Army Artifacts, a program for Foundation members that shows Army history can be found anywhere. Today, my guest is Russ Horton, who is the Reference and Outreach Archivist for the Wisconsin Veterans Museum in Madison, Wisconsin. Russ, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So, Russ, can you start by telling us a little bit about the Wisconsin Veterans Museum?
Sure. The Wisconsin Veterans Museum is an educational activity of the Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs. We were actually started in 1901 by Civil War veterans who wanted to ensure that the stories of their service would be remembered by future generations.
Oh, how
And that's
cool.
kind of what yeah, that's what our museum kind of aims to do is to tell the stories of individual Wisconsin veterans.
hmm
We were started by the Civil War vets, but obviously we've expanded as time has gone on, and we now, go up through current era veterans. We have things coming in now from folks who served in Iraq and Afghanistan and all over the world. Um, we have over 26,000 objects. We have tens of thousands of letters and photographs and
Wait,
other
wait, wait. Did you say 26,000? Because I've been to this museum. 26,000. Oh
yeah,
my goodness.
not all of them are on display.
Okay.
A smaller number. We're actually trying to raise money right now to build a new museum so we can show a little bit more. But yeah, a lot of our objects are in storage. They're available to researchers and family to come in and see, but not everything can get out on display.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh well,
So
that's a
we also
wow.
have, it's a big number. It's a
Sorry.
big number.
For those of you who have not been to this museum, it is amazing how the staff utilizes the space it has available. It's in an old department store building, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and there's so much on display, different eras. One of my favorite exhibits visiting there was has all the souvenirs, the postcards, and trinkets that soldiers would send home as gifts. I love that exhibit, but you're telling me that there's even more in storage somewhere in that building. It's because there's also a helicopter in there. There's uniforms, medals,
hmm
armaments, like so much, and the space itself is really large. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually were fortunate enough to we share a brand new storage facility with another institution in the state. So our objects that are not on display are stored off site
hmm
in a brand new, state of the art climate controlled facility. So
Oh,
that's a nice thing to have.
well, thanks. So we're not going to talk about the museum. We're actually going to talk about one of the veterans. I could go all day about this museum because I was just so excited to see it in person and then
That's
interview
great.
you. But we're not going to talk about an artifact. We're going to talk about one of the veterans, Major Jackie Mulhern, who served in the Wisconsin Army National Guard as a nurse from 1981 to 1994. So, Russ, what can you tell us about Jackie?
Sure. So Jackie she was born in Indiana, but she moved at a young age to Wisconsin. She grew up in a small community called Peshtigo, which is about 3,000 people in
hmm
northeastern Wisconsin. She attended nursing school at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and after she graduated from there, she began working as a psychiatric nurse in the area here in Madison. Um, in 1981, as you mentioned, at the age of
hmm
45, she enlisted into the Wisconsin Army National Guard. She was assigned to the 13th Evacuation Hospital, which is a unit based in Madison. She served for 13 years as a surgical and a psychiatric nurse. She rose to the rank of major, and she celebrated her 56th birthday while deployed to the Middle East during Operation Desert Storm. I was fortunate enough to know Jackie when I started working at the museum in 2001. She was volunteering here in the archives. She edited oral history interview transcripts. I remember her being a very kind and cheerful person. And to be honest, it was over a year after I met her before I knew she was a veteran. So it wasn't something she talked about a whole lot, but she was proud of her service.
You said she joined the National Guard at 45.
Yes.
That
A little
seems a
out
little
of
older
order.
than some of the other recruits that go into the National Guard, correct?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, we have quite a few collections from folks who served in the 13th Evacuation Hospital since they're
Hmm.
local. And from another person who joined at a later age, a doctor, we've kind of learned that in the 1980s, the Wisconsin
Hmm.
National Guard was short on medical personnel. So they began kind of actively seeking out folks to join, doctors and nurses and other medical
Oh.
professionals to join. So although we don't have it straight from Jackie's mouth, I would
Hmm.
tend to guess that that's what got her, because that's when she joined was in the 80s, and she probably saw the increased activity trying to find medical professionals to join the Guard.
Oh. Because my next question was going to be, did she ever talk about why she even joined beyond the need?
Yeah, not directly that
Okay.
I can remember, but I think that's a pretty good guess that
Hmm.
advertising got to her. Yeah.
So you said she was in Desert Storm. I noticed from the collection list and information you sent ahead of time that she received a few medals and commendations for things she did. Do you know more about those?
So yeah, she received, some fairly standard medals for that era. She had the Southwest Asia Service Medal with 3 bronze service stars, because she was there during Desert Shield, Desert
Hmm.
Storm, and the ceasefire campaign. She got the Kuwait Liberation Medal, and then, just kind of a variety of Army awards: Army Service Medal, Army Achievement Medal, Good Conduct Medal, National Defense Service Medal, and Commendation Medal. Um, while she was over there, she and the 13th Evac Hospital, just to give you an idea of what she was doing, they set up a
Hmm.
400-bed hospital in the desert. They treated more than 4,000 patients during
Oh,
just
wow.
the brief conflict, and most were non-combat related, and they were outpatient, but they did admit over 400 patients during the conflict and performed over 100 operations. I also know from reading newspaper articles about the 13th Evac Hospital, that they were fired upon by Scud missiles during the war, so they were not out of danger's way while they were out there.
So you mentioned she didn't talk much about what she actually did, but do you know anything about like what she was doing in the hospital? Was it just patient care? Was it operations? Was it just all of the above, whatever was needed?
Yeah, my understanding is it was kind of all of the above. Whatever was needed. I think it was more of the surgical nurse than the
Okay.
psychiatric nurse while she was over there.
Okay. And do you know what happened after her time in the National Guard? I mean, obviously you said she worked at the museum, but how did she get to the museum?
Yeah, so I mean, I think after her service, she continued to work as a psychiatric nurse in Madison.
Hmm.
I don't know exactly how she found the museum. She was already volunteering here when I started, but I think
Hmm.
she really enjoyed. I mentioned that she was editing oral history transcripts, and I
Yeah.
think she really enjoyed kind of getting to hear other veteran stories. And
Hmm.
we have other veterans who volunteer here. I think she enjoyed interacting with other vets. And yeah, I think she really enjoyed her time here.
And just for people watching our episode, I've done a few oral histories of my own. I'm sure you have as well, Russ, but
Mhm.
I know it can take not only the recording time, which could last anywhere from 30 minutes to several hours, but the transcribing part where you're getting word for word for word. You could
Mhm.
spend, what, a week on just one? I mean, and that would be quick.
Yeah, it can be very time intensive.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
very
we can
time
really
intensive.
have folks checking the transcript and editing it, which is kind of what Jackie did,
Hmm.
because having multiple ears listen to an interview is usually a
Hmm.
good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And how long was she with the museum?
She volunteered here for about 7 years, through about 2008. And then I believe she started having some medical issues, and that maybe reduced the amount of time she
Mm.
had to volunteer.
Yeah, and she, just for those listening, Jackie did die in 2018, so she's no longer with us. But the museum has a large collection of hers for people to research and look at. And because we are in the summer of Barbie movie, I noticed there's an Army Barbie in that collection.
There for sure is. Yep. That's actually the
Do you know?
Oh, please go ahead.
No, it's actually what?
I was going to say it's the first item that we got from her. She loaned the Barbie to us
Hmm.
in the 90s so that we could use it in an exhibit on Desert Storm, Desert Shield. There are little details that I think are one of the reasons that Jackie kept this and kind of treasured it a little bit. If you look at the Barbie, she's wearing
Hmm.
a beret, and the beret has a caduceus symbol on it. So this particular Army Barbie was a medical personnel, and then she's also carrying two medical bags. So I think Jackie really felt like this Barbie, as a Army medical
Hmm.
personnel, represented her story and her service. I think that's why she treasured it so much.
Oh, that's great.
And then I
Hmm.
think as she saw how we cared for our collection items, and she saw kind of what we were about as a museum, she became more comfortable with us, and that loan of the Barbie became a permanent donation. And then the other objects we have from her, uniforms, souvenirs, papers, photographs, those all came in I think in about 2007. So yeah, the Barbie was the first one though.
And what are some of the other standouts from her collection?
Well, I think one of the more interesting things is we have two sets of BDUs from her battle dress uniform. One set is in woodland camouflage pattern, and one set
Hmm.
is in desert camouflage pattern. And we know from talking again, kind of to some other members of the 13th Evac Hospital, and we know from some of the pictures that Jackie donated that for the majority of their time in the Middle East, they wore the woodland camouflage because
Hmm.
the desert camouflage took a while to get there. So I think they made it a point to wear them on their way home. But from what I
Hmm.
understand, that was that was mostly the only time that they wore the desert camo. The other neat object that I personally find interesting, I
Hmm.
remember Jackie always having a stylish pair of glasses on when I knew her, and she donated a pair of Army issued eyeglasses that she received for service in the Middle East. And in researching them a little bit, we found out that soldiers referred to these issued glasses as BCGs, birth control glasses, because of how clunky and kind of unattractive they were. So
That's
I thought
awful.
that was
That's
interesting
awful.
insight. It is pretty awful, yeah, but I think it
I guess it,
speaks.
it was what, the 80s and 90s? Different
Yep,
time?
it was a different time, yeah, yeah, and I think it kind of speaks toward that a little bit.
Oh. Any other standouts?
She brought home a few souvenirs, as a lot of folks who serve overseas do.
Hmm.
Some clothing items that are worn in the Middle East. She brought home a feed bag that she somehow picked up that has Arabic writing on it.
Huh,
Um, the letters. We have some letters that she wrote home to family. We have some letters that family wrote home to her. We have some photographs of her. We have a small diary that she kept while she was overseas. So those are all some pretty neat items from her service that help us to tell her story.
are any of her collection items on display currently?
I am not aware that any of them are right now. The Barbie
Hmm.
was rotated out a few years ago,
Hmm.
but all of the objects are available to see online through our catalog. You can see pictures of them and read descriptions of them. And of course, anything, as you mentioned, is available to researchers. So if anyone wants to learn more about Jackie or see anything from her collection, they can just contact us and we can go from there.
Yes, you can go to their website at www.wisvetsmuseum.com. It has a really great website and searching research tool to look through all their collections, which, as you just heard, is extremely vast. But before we close out, why do you think a story like Jackie's story, is so important to Army and U.S. history?
Sure. So our motto at the Wisconsin Veterans Museum is every veteran is a story. We believe very strongly that whether folks served stateside or overseas, whether they served in
Hmm.
wartime or peacetime, whether they served in the front lines or behind the lines, that the story of their service is worth telling. and that people can relate to all different sorts of those stories. So I think that Jackie's story is important, one, because it tells the story of a Wisconsin veteran, the unique story, but it also helps a lot of people relate to military service in a way that they might not through, a 20 something man or woman. It's a different aspect of service that maybe people don't know about, and her story helps get that out there.
Now, I know because we do have members from all over the country. Some might try to send you some of their collections because they're from Wisconsin. What would you suggest people do if they have something they think you might want?
Sure, that's a good question. I would recommend that they reach out to us
Hmm.
ahead of time. we, as great as it sounds, getting a random box in the mail full of things isn't. It can present some issues for us. So, like
Hmm.
being able to have a conversation with people ahead of time to make sure
Okay.
that the things that they want to give meet our collection policy. We can ask some questions ahead of time about the veteran and what they might know about some of these items. That would be the best way to go. So yeah, if they can
Okay.
contact us through our website, we can get that process started. Mhm.
Well, thank you so much, Russ, for taking the time to talk with me about Jackie, so that we can learn her story and remember her story. And for anyone who's in the Wisconsin area or traveling, Madison is a really pretty downtown area. My husband and I found parking very easily down the street. There's a lot of little local restaurants, and it's right next to the Capitol building, so it's easy to find. And if you'd like to learn more about the Wisconsin Veterans Museum or search their online collections, remember you can go to their website at www.wisvetsmuseum.com. Thank you for watching another episode of Army Artifacts.